So as a quickie on Finland, because I've talked a lot about Finland, I still find it the most fascinating country. Yes, it has its border, 2,500, 3,000 miles of it, or whatever it is, with Russia. And that's very interesting because there's no question at all that Finland, it's in the euro, Finland actually uses the euro as its currency. So Finland is very much a Western country, and if there was a war, in effect, you would expect Finland to be on our side, assuming that the war was between East and West. And yet, Finland has got this border with Russia, a very scary place to be. During the Cold War, when there was the constant threat that the Russians were going to actually make a move on the rest of us, Finland would have been the first place that they would have walked through. So as a child, growing up in that period, you would have been very, very, very nervous of the Great Bear next door. What were they going to do? And it hasn't happened. It's been blown out of proportion, I think myself, that we've all spent the last 50 years of my life being told that the Russians are about to press the button any minute now, and it never happens. But here, it is true what they say, that this is where the East meets West more than any other country, because you can't say that in the old Eastern Bloc countries, because Russia had such a huge influence on it. It's not a case of saying the East met the West there. It was more like the East took over the West, so therefore that's completely different. But here, when you go to the east side of Finland, which is fascinating in itself, right on the border of Russia, is bewilderingly interesting because it is so Russian influenced, which is not a surprise. 2 miles down the road, it's Russia. There's a huge difference once you go through that border, but nevertheless, all those border towns in Finland, the people look more Soviet, totally wrong word, look more Russian. They're more influenced by Russian. Some of the road signs, some of the names of the houses got a Russian alphabet to them. So it's very, very, very marked. Of course, once you get through that border into Russia, you couldn't say the opposite. You couldn't then turn around and say, oh, a border town in Russia has an influence from Finland. Now, definitely not. No question at all. That would not have been allowed by the Ruskies. It's just such an interesting place, and they're such interesting people. I was going to say before, what's it like riding around or driving around in Finland? And it occurred to me then that I thought it's very, very, very similar to Canada. But if you haven't been to Canada, that's a bit of a silly thing to say, isn't it, really? But basically, it is just forests. The roads are cut through from forests. And you're bouldering along at stupid speeds. I mean, this is why I've taking a bit of a break now. You're averaging 100 mile per hour easy here. There is nothing to stop you. There's no speed limits. The roads are in perfect condition. There's hardly anybody on the roads. If I had a bike that was capable of doing much faster speeds, you would probably be doing much faster speeds. I'm a massive believer that at the end of the day, if you have an accident on a motorbike at 70 mile per hour, the chances are you're not going to survive it. So really, it doesn't make any difference whether you're doing 70 or 120. I know that people will argue that issue, and yes, I am not suggesting for 1 second that you do 120 mile per hour on the Wrexham to Bala road, because that's half the reason why these lads get killed on those roads. That's stupid. But when you're on a big, wide road, I don't know. If a reindeer comes at me and I'm doing 70 mile per hour, I don't think there's going to be much left of him, and there ain't going to be much left of me. So there's my theory on it. So there we go. Anyway, from a biking or driving point of view, you would love Finland. Trust me.